What's up, everyone? It's Roger here from DisKingdom.com for episode number 111 of the Infinity and Beyond podcast. And I am joined, as per usual, there in sleepy Washington, D.C. All right, James, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you this morning?
Yeah, I'm good. It's Bank Holiday Monday. The sun is shining, so I'm going to be very good later on this week's show. Yes, somewhere it should be shining. On this week's show, we're going to be discussing all of this week's Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars video games news, though there is very, very little. So we'll be talking a little bit about Marvel Heroes, 2016's newest character, Angelina. And then finally, our featured topic for today is going to be kind of like a post-mortem kind of dissection of Disney Infinity 3.0. We've done the last 2 weeks, we've done 2.0 and 1.0, where we went right through the timeline, looking at what was good, what was bad, and also primarily looking at it from afterwards. What was setting up the signs of having issues, looking back with a bit of hindsight. The 3.0 is slightly more different because we were kind of in the middle of it when it went down under. So let's start with the fun stuff. So Angelina got released for Marvel Heroes 2016, brand new character. Did you get to try this one out, James?
Yeah, I have been playing with her. I think she starts off slow. Like, she's not very much fun at her low levels, but once you unlock some of the higher level skills, she gets pretty good.
Yeah, I had a quick blast with her the other night, probably about an hour or so. I think I only got her up to about level 10 or so it wasn't too good. First impressions were, I think I was probably in that low end zone where, very good for up close. Which is not really how I play. That's the only issue I have with this one. Is I'm more of a ranged player when I'm playing the game, where I like to use like the Iron Man kind of technique of attacking them from afar and not really getting up close and personal. I last a little bit longer that way. So this one didn't really kind of jump into my initial way of playing. The ribbons attack of when she charges forward, it kind of looks like something like from Venom or something like that. So overall, wasn't quite my cup of tea in terms of, like I said, I like ranged attacks, and that's was my instant issue with the character. I think that was just straight off the bat. I don't know if that improved with some extra things you open up later on.
No, she's pretty much a melee character. Everything that I've done with her has been close range. She does have a couple of those ribbon attacks like you were talking about, but even those are pretty short range. And you mentioned it looked like she was Venom. I actually thought a lot of her abilities look like they came from other characters. She has a kind of a dash attack later that looks like it came from Black Cat and stuff like that. But I guess that's also going to be inevitable when you have 58, 59 characters in a game. So
yeah, I mean, it was the 59th character. They definitely look. I mean, the only this was a fan. This is what fans wanted. This was like a character that they've been requesting.
Yeah, which I always think was kind of weird because in the comics, the reaction to her by comic fans has been kind of tepid.
Yeah.
But they voted for her to be added to this game, and she's here, and I think she's in Future Fight, maybe one of the mobile games. But other than that, I don't know.
Yeah, personally, I still think of it as a little bit of a the games are being used as a way of introducing these characters over the long periods to get so when they do something with some merchandise or movies or whatever, an audience is already waiting for it, because it seems to have worked. I was playing Marvel Alliance 2 most of the week, and you keep seeing like characters like Black Panther and stuff coming on, and there's that thing of it's been slowly sort of etched into over time. Even if you don't read the comics, these games, through like Lego games as well, they're introducing you to these characters, so you're aware of them much more. And I do think the video games are a great way of doing that. And so this character, I'm going to be honest, I know very, very little about her. I've never read anything with her in the comic books. So this was really like one of my first introductions to this character, which is why I'm maybe picking up on this a little bit more, because that's how I feel it's coming in as a good way of introducing me to a character I've got. But then that also means the opposite thing of I have no connection with this character when I'm playing her.
Yeah, I've actually read very little of her comics as well. I'm just aware of her presence in the Marvel universe, but I don't think she was quite the hit that Marvel thought she was going to be when they acquired the rights to her. We'll see if sticking her back in the Guardians of the Galaxy comic will kind of bring her star back up. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's good. I think it's great that they're still adding these characters. Obviously, they wanted like the 59th, so all the big players are already in the game, and they can do lots of different costume changes. But now we're into like we're going into the 60s. They're going to have to go into a little bit more into the deep bench, as we would know it as, to kind of bring us characters. But also, what this did show as well, and this is what I did like, was how a digital platform with different characters allows you to introduce characters that you wouldn't see, like for example on a Disney Infinity. You'd never see her as a Disney Infinity character because she's too too obscure, but in a digital format it can work so much easier.
Yeah, exactly. But I think Disney Infinity, they were starting to kind of scratch some of those lower tier characters as well.
Yeah.
And maybe lesser known characters. If it had gone on long enough, we could have ended up seeing an Angela figure or whatever.
Yeah, especially by sort of Disney Infinity 7.8 or something.
Yeah.
But no, I think generally, they're doing some different events. They had an end of summer event in Marvel Heroes. And they've also tweaked the chapter 1. They seem to be going back and like retweaking. I know they did the raft about a month or two ago, and now they've gone back in, tweaked the first chapter. Looks like they're just going back through and just tweaking up the story, making it a bit tighter, adding some new areas. Maybe not necessarily to encourage old players to jump back into it, but also just to make it so it doesn't quite feel quite so maybe dated for new characters or new people joining.
Yeah, I think the prologue, which was the raft, and chapter 1 now, they feel much more streamlined. They feel much more in line with how the game plays now.
Yeah.
So, and I think with it also coming out at the same time as a new character, you do have that incentive to go back and maybe try it again for the first time or whatever.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. I mean, I love the fact that they're introducing these characters. Marvel seem to be on a roll with adding characters to their games. They've also added Daredevil to Avengers Academy, though that's the game I just don't play. I think they added Gwenpool to Future Fight. They've been adding all like a couple of the X-Men like Gambit and Beast to Contest of Champions. They do seem to have got a better idea with the Marvel stuff of dragging out those characters, stretching it out. They know that this is the plan now for these kind of games to keep the interest going.
Yeah, they seem to have found their sweet spot, and I think they've figured out how to properly incentivize or monetize these games. So, if we see some new ones, I bet that they'll add a lot of characters very quickly to them as well.
No, it's definitely kind of cool. Like it's great to see new characters, especially in kind of like this summer lull where there's not really a lot going on. It does definitely feels like in the whole video game industry at the minute, we're right at that point where it's just before the holiday season's about to kick off. All the big games are coming sort of October, November. You got everyone's expecting an NX announcement. Everyone's expecting the Neo and the PlayStation Slim, if we're allowed to mention it. And then we've got then you're gonna have VR, and we're right at that point where I think we're just in that lull just before it all gets going.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get some announcements, not just for those, but maybe for like some mobile games, or maybe following in the Ultimate Alliance games, get some remasters of some of those older games, which would be nice.
Yeah, we did have a discussion earlier this week on next week's feature topic, because we still think it's going to be a bit quiet for a little bit longer. We're going to be discussing kind of what might happen next with all the Disney games and what might be coming, and just kind of having a bit of a brainstorm, just idea of what could be coming once now that Infinity is over. So any other news that we've had this week? And that's been really, really quiet this week.
As we talked about before the show, I think Disney Magic Kingdoms, that mobile game, has a very small event going on, but nothing like newsworthy. I think that's the only thing I can think of.
No, yeah, it hasn't really been. I think there've been a couple of updates to the Zum Zum game, but very, 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 very minimal little tweaks. Really, nothing of any interest there. So let's jump. Oh, carry on.
I think the Little Mermaid event is ending on Disney Emoji or something.
The Ursula, I think, was available. I'm going to be honest. I sort of stopped playing that a long time ago.
Yeah, me too, actually. But I see it on my Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading an article the other day about how like an app can, within if it doesn't have the right budget to start with for advertising and getting ahead, if it's not sort of done anything within the first few weeks, it literally can be like buried and gone. And And I still don't think Disney put any marketing into this at all.
No, I think Disney Emoji and what is it, Avengers Alliance 2 kind of disappeared into the ether, and I suspect that they'll lose support pretty quickly. So
yeah, I'm wondering if that's maybe because there's a lot of internal restructuring going on right at the time when these got released, and I'm wondering if that's been the main reason.
I mean, it sounds as good a reason as any. That would also maybe explain why Marvel Sum hasn't come out yet on a stateside or in the EU.
Yeah. So let's jump into the meat and potatoes of this episode. So we're going to be discussing Disney Infinity 3.0. We've done 1.0 and 2.0 in the last couple of weeks. We're going to just run through our thoughts on. We're going to kind of go through the timeline of what happened when, and looking at it from the point of view of where were some of the mistakes, what were the things, what were some of the highlights of, and also just a kind of idea of looking at sort of where things went wrong. And now some of this might come across a little bit negative because we're primarily focused on what was signifying issues going wrong. Now I'm going to be perfectly honest. To me, 3.0 was almost like a tale of two stories. We had everything was great up till November, and then we had after November. So there was kind of like two different eras of Disney Infinity. So let's jump all the way back to the launch, which was announced sort of, well, it leaked as unsurprisingly first, and then it got announced through Game Informer, through an amazing article. Which, what did you think of that? Like the way they launched it this time rather than 2.0?
I think that they had a lot more hype going into it than 2.0. They had the Star Wars license, which was a huge announcement. Obviously, the sites already knew that we were going to get Star Wars, but the general public, wasn't paying attention, so it was big news, and a lot of people were suddenly on the bandwagon. Oh, I get to play with lightsabers and Yoda and Obi-Wan and all that stuff. And I mean, if I remember correctly, the Game Informer article didn't actually have that much information, but it had a lot of really cool promo art and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I just remember it being just kind of an explosion of information of characters and playsets, because it said, you're going to have Inside Out, Rise of the Empire, Twilight of the Republic, and a Force Awakens playset. There are going to be some Marvel stuff coming, and they literally just came out the bat of like everything I feel that went wrong with the 2.0 launch was what they then instantly came out with, and literally just blasted home. Disney, Marvel, Star Wars is in this game. It's all in here. There's a Disney playset for Disney fans, so do not worry. Even though Inside Out at the time was brand new, and the Disney fans were a bit like, we don't know who they are, so I don't like it. It was that same thing. The movie comes out, everyone's like, I love it. It was. I just remember the whole thing was just like, I don't know why they picked this and not giving us a Beauty and the Beast. Well, the movie's coming out, it'll be fine. But now that was, that initial thing. They gave us a lot of information, which then kind of, fed through E3 of getting all that information out, and just sort of, there seemed to be an explosion of information, which I think was a good way of doing them. They managed to keep, because I think when they did the 2.0, where they were doing like the one character a week, stretching it out, you had leaks, but also it frustrated people. This was like, here it is, it's coming, and that was good. I think that was the best way they could have done that.
Yeah, because once you have the information, you can spend all the time in the world you want, like poring over the details and going, this is how this is going to work. These characters are going to interact in this way. You can theorize how you want things to go, or how you think Disney's going to do stuff. And we had the information at our fingertips. It was nice and compact and easy to get into.
Yeah, it's just a shame that they did this kind of thing where we were all expecting like Star Wars Celebration. They were all then waiting for May the 4th, and then finally this like magazine just came out of nowhere, which was a little bit of an anti-climax compared to what they had this major event the year before with a big stage of Samuel L. Jackson, and the next year it's just another games magazine, and they're like, a games magazine? Who reads one of them? It was quite an odd like jump from one to the other.
And in addition to that, it's the GameStop game magazine too, which is it's kind of questionable whether people have a lot of faith in GameStop these days, or even back when this was announced. I think most gamers were starting to realize I can go to Best Buy, Target, Amazon. I don't have to go to a game store for this stuff.
Yeah.
So
I mean, yes, it's the same with game here in the UK. Though every time we walk in there and you look at the prices and you just think, this is a shop meant for girlfriends, wives, and mums to buy stuff. And that's kind of like my partner or kid needs a game. This is where I have to come.
exactly, and for that purpose, GameStop works fine. And if you want to trade in a bunch of your games that you're no longer doing, GameStop works fine. But I think most people do most of their shopping at other major box retailers now rather than GameStop or Game.
So let's now let's look a little bit sort of further on. So really, we had like E3 where they kind of went through all the information of what they went on. We then had San Diego Comic-Con, which was, I can't remember what there was. Was there anything at San Diego? I don't remember there being a lot coming out of that one.
I think they didn't actually announce anything at San Diego Comic-Con. I think.
Oh, I just remembered what it was actually.
was that the Ant-Man?
That was the Ant-Man.
Yeah. So we referenced this last week, but they released a teaser image, right? Something big is coming to Marvel, and then obviously it's all the Avengers focused around this, looking in like Hulk's hand or something like that, and everyone knew it was Ant-Man.
Yeah.
And we were expecting the announcement at San Diego, but then some behind-the-scenes stuff happened, and that announcement got canceled, and so nothing got announced at San Diego Comic-Con.
No, yeah, and there was this kind of big because I was just listening to the Infinity Inside Infinity podcast, and they put up their 100th episode, which was from last July, which was kind of quite interesting to listen to it a year long, where they had an interview with JV. And I think that interview basically was not allowed to be broadcast because whatever, I don't know why, but there was a little bit about this event, and basically it all got done at the last minute. No one really knew, there wasn't, they were literally inviting people on last minute. And I think the hype for it they knew they made a mistake they had hyped up that there was going to be reveals and there was going to be special guests, and they didn't really have anything to back it up. And they learned a little bit about sort of doing it. They kind of made a similar mistake when they did like a November release party, and everyone was expecting kind of major announcements, and no, it's just the same characters we've already announced. But I do remember that San Diego Comic-Con being Ant-Man is coming to the game. We're teasing the Marvel, but they never officially announce Ant-Man until the week the game the playset came out this year. Ages.
I remember, expecting the announcement at San Diego Comic-Con. I'd actually already written the article that we were going to post on iHeart Infinity. It's like, Ant-Man's been announced, and this, he's going to be in this movie, or he was in this movie, and this is what the character is, and fun stuff like that. And then okay, all right. As far as I know, it's still sitting in draft state on the iHeart Infinity blog somewhere. It never got published.
Just post it one day, we got the information there. It was a real it was one of those kind of I think it was the first big letdown from the community, because there was a hype about something and it didn't match up to it, and then Marvel then started basically kind of got a lot of blame and was kind of like the scapegoat for all the things that was going on with it.
I mean, scapegoat, yeah, but also at the same time, there's a certain amount of. Well, we can't say for certain because we don't know all the background stuff, but it certainly seems like Marvel was a bottleneck in terms of the information, because it wasn't just Ant-Man that we didn't learn about officially until near the end. A lot of the characters, Vision and Black Panther and all of them, we only really got an official announcement, about a month before Battlegrounds came out?
Yeah.
Give or take?
Yeah, I mean, they showed us some of the Battleground stuff at New York Comic-Con later in October and kind of teased a little bit. But maybe by the time, looking back on it with hindsight, I can't help but feel that the reason it didn't get so much publicity in the March time was because of what was happening. So we'll go into that a little bit later on, but right. I can't help but feel like something was shifting around in the background at that point. Or maybe there was just this lack of confidence in the playset that they didn't want to push it too much.
Right, and then if I remember correctly, New York Comic Con is when they announced Captain America: First Avenger, and everyone was kind of like, "Wait, what's this? We already have a Captain America."
Yeah, that one didn't really go down the way I think they anticipated, because I think it was very much a kind of thing of going, "What? Hold on, we got a play set with a character we've already got with a variant." Was not popular choice. I mean, the figure itself I think most people were happy with the figure. I don't think it was necessarily about the figure itself. It was just about a forced variant. I think was the one thing people were bugged about.
I mean, it was, we've already got a Captain America, and we didn't know at New York, I don't think, that it was going to be the only figure in the play set. But of course, that became the other issue later on.
Yeah, and I think that it just, again, this is with the miscommunication with the Marvel stuff. But let's jump back a little bit earlier than that. So we had we then went into D23, which I think that weekend was the big highlight. I think, in all honesty, that was the WrestleMania of Disney Infinity, was D23 and Toy Box Summit. You know, all over a few days. You know, the live crew were in there doing it. We had, you know, I think you were there. Abe from our site was there. You had Will from DITV. You had Jason Inquires there. You had Brendan from Game Trailers. You know, you guys were all there. You were, you know, there was this hype. They were, you know, the video games was on the main stage. It was all, I remember watching it on Periscope. The game was literally just like explode. It was you know, Disney. It was at Disneyland. Kind of, you know, there was just an amazing experience. Obviously, you were there, so you can kind of give us a little bit more information on that one.
Yeah, it was. Everyone was optimistic. Everyone was thrilled to be there. There was a great sense that everyone was having fun. I didn't actually get to do the Toy Box Summit itself. I submitted too late to get to that. This was very much a spur of the moment thing for me. But I did get to explore Disneyland at least, so there was that, which I'd never been to. But at D23, I did get to meet up with most of the people there. And, you know, just wandering around the booth and just seeing all the Disney stuff. They had these cool, like, chandelier kind of things with the power discs all strung up, and we were told, don't touch them. There were people just standing there making sure we didn't touch them. But I think Mighty Gidas even had, like, a story of, like, a security guard telling her to back off. But it was such an electric atmosphere, and it wasn't just Infinity. Obviously, D23 is everything Disney, so you know, everyone is hyped to be there. But there were so many cool people. There were people not associated with the community who would stop by the booth, and you know, everyone was welcoming and open and answered questions, and they were giving away figures. I walked away from there with like 11 figures because I went through that line so many times. I met Model Train Man and his mom, actually, one of the Disney Infinity artists, and I became good friends with him over that. Yeah. So
it definitely feels like if you were at one of those events like E3 or something like that, you know, people, there was literally Disney Infinity fans just basically camped there for a week.
It felt like it. I remember going on that Sunday morning when they did the video game announcements, and just camping out to get in line for that, and it was awesome. Not just for Infinity, but there were a ton of cool video game announcements at D23. That's where we learned about Magic Kingdoms and learned about Battlefront and all sorts of stuff. And then Finn and Rey came up on stage, which was cool.
Yeah. And they did a Kingdom Hearts free announcement as well with I think it was the Baymax and Big Hero 6 stuff. So it was a big event. It was like the accumulation of just this thing of just feeling like video games was being taken seriously by being Disney. They were being presented like the movies. Now I am actually really, like, I was only thinking this yesterday, going, like, this year's D24, next year's D23. Are they going to even do a games presentation? There's going to have loads of games coming out because Marvel and Star Wars and Disney's, but it's like, is it going to have that same feeling? Because Disney feel like it's gone back into itself and going, well, games are something, are just a merchandise item, whereas we view it like, you know, just as big. You know, big Kingdom Hearts free to us is probably bigger than some of the movies coming out.
Yeah, well, they'll probably announce like Kingdom Hearts 2.9 or something just to keep you on the hook for another 10 years. So,
well, there is a lot of good signs pointing the next year being the year for free. They've just taken on they're taking on some people to do some post-editing, post-production stuff. You've got the World Tour, you've got the 15th anniversary. You know, next year's looking like, you know, it could be the year that we finally see it. So
the real question for me with D23, if they had a video game presentation, since they don't have Disney Infinity, are they going to give something away? Yeah. Because the last two D23s, we had the Sorcerer Mickey, and then the Kingdom Hearts Power Disc from last year.
Yeah.
But there's no no equivalent game that we know about for next year.
You could have a little Lego minifigure.
Yeah, sure. We can have a little Lego minifigure.
Yeah. On the subject there, you mentioned probably the biggest off thing from that event was the Kingdom Hearts Power Disc, which was, let's just say, that was one of the maybe the low blows, to go back to the WrestleMania analogy. You can tell I've been playing WWE 20K this year. It's literally, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of people that were like, yeah, it's great, we've been to the event, we spent all that, and there was a lot of fans going, whoa, this is too big to hide behind. You know, it had all the Kingdom Hearts fans in, and there's a lot of Kingdom Hearts fans that wanted it. And so they were pushing up the price for it. You know, a lot of fans were like, whoa, hold on. There's one thing giving a figure that looks a little bit different, but to give content like that was a major misstep, which of course then everyone's saying, oh, Kingdom Hearts coming in 4.0. But that was a bit of and the reaction, I don't think the team had been anticipating the reaction that they got to that one.
Oh no, it absolutely blindsided them. It was obvious from talking to him just that one day that the reaction on Twitter and Facebook was crazy, and it's understandable. You know, it's one of those items that a lot of people want and was in very minimal quantity. Even after the show, it took iHeart Infinity a long time of badgering to get one extra.
I haven't got it. I haven't got it either. I was never willing to pay for it. But I always had this thing of, like, when they talked about it, it was a little bit like, whoa, do you know you got all these? It's like, and they were like, well, you know, these fans have spent this much money to come to the event, and I was like, well, you can't, you know, that was not fair for like us Europeans or Australians. It's going to cost us like £4,000 to go to an event to get a power disc. It's not really, you know, if we did that with, if it was we always said, as if it was the shoe was on the other foot, and you know, Star Wars Celebration this year, whoa, there was a brand new power disc figure, everyone would have gone mental on us for
The other thing, though, is, you know, it wasn't just Disney Infinity fans who were upset by this. It was Kingdom Hearts fans who had never played Disney Infinity. Yeah. And this could have been a great outreach to Disney, to Kingdom Hearts fans, to be like, hey, we've got your Mickey in our game. You don't have Kingdom Hearts 3 yet. We don't know when it's coming out. But you can have at least a little piece of it right here, right now. And that could have been a great selling point, and it backfired on them.
Definitely. I think also at the event, they also showed off, or they didn't really show off, but they announced that Peter Pan was picked by the Toy Box Summit as the character. Because I think was always one of the cool things from the summit was, you know, bringing together the Toy Box artists into like a committee to sort of have meetings, and they picked the character. Apparently it came out of left field. Disney weren't expecting that character. And we never saw it. We've seen the concept that it never arrived.
Well, it was going to arrive, but obviously it got canned before then. I'm still mad that they didn't pick Darkwing Duck.
I think it's just like it was such a cool thing. I think the whole thing of bringing in the artists to act as a liaison officially for it, though I can't help but feel like once they did that and they were then under like contracts, it did change everything from the Toy Box artists going forward, compared to 2.0 from the summit. It was once they were signed into contracts and stuff, you know, and they were like starting to, things changed a little bit from that point onwards.
It definitely felt that way from an outsider perspective, because I was never really involved with it. I knew some of the artists, but I never, you know, got into the actual creation. But there was this shift that the weekly challenges had gone from being, oh, this is fun, I might enter into this, into like, this is a serious competition. And I forget how they referred to it, but like Toy Box Summit Fever or whatever was hardcore, and they made it a job. If you weren't working on toy boxes an additional 8 hours on top of whatever else you do during the day, you weren't going.
It was a pretty tough thing from that point on. But I think a lot of people, especially since Disney Infinity got cancelled, look back at that weekend, especially those that were at the event, as like I said, as like kind of the pinnacle, the highlight, one of the biggest highlights of the entire. And I can't help but look back on it. Other than the King Mickey situation, I think they really did knock out that weekend I think they really went above and beyond, and I think they really did get that excitement level at the fever pitch for this game.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think you said it earlier. This was the height of Infinity 3.0. The hype was at its maximum. Everyone was feeling optimistic. You know, the people who'd played it, myself included, were like, "This is so much fun." The combat system's been overhauled. Speedway is looking great. Takeover looks great. The play sets that we had a chance to play looked awesome. They played awesome. It was very positive experience.
And I still, and like this is like what I said earlier, is I still feel like that launch for 3.0 was probably one of the strongest ones. They brought it, it was out in August. It was out. It got at least a month's head start on Skylanders, and also the new Lego Dimensions, which was about to hit, which was, they had some new competition. So they were really going in heavy and hard on it. We had the initial launch, which because I think it was literally like the week later than the game launched, so it was right on fever pitch. It came obviously with the Twilight of the Republic came with it, and you had the Inside Out, and you also had the solo disc and digital download. So they allowed that this time. The actual, they didn't go down the line of the second starter pack, though they did have the sort of, they didn't really even, it wasn't even a collector's edition. It was just, you got Boba Fett as a timed exclusive. And you also got the Rise, because I always think of Rise of the Empire as a launch title, but obviously it was officially a month later.
Right, and that last year, I did actually have a PlayStation 4, so I did spring for that. And having Boba Fett and Rise Against was fantastic, straight up. So
yeah. I mean, I think they were a little bit more kind of upfront about what had happened, because obviously with what had happened with Hulk with 2.0, they learned a mistake. They were very much kind of like, Boba Fett is coming in like January or in early 2016. He is coming. He is a PlayStation timed exclusive, but it never really, I don't think a lot of people really felt like the need that, the big collector's edition was not the same kind of big monkey that we've seen the year before. And in general, it seemed like a good option for a lot of, I know, for me, it was like, an instant must have kind of thing of doing it.
Yeah. And, it wasn't even like special packaging or anything. There was an extra box, but if you open that box, it was just a regular starter with a regular Rise Against the Empire with a regular Boba Fett. There was nothing outside of that big box to indicate it was special edition, which was a good choice. Yeah,
I still think that was a good idea. When you look at even what Skylanders are doing this year, all the different starter packs and the dark editions and all the rest of it, and all the especially compared to, you look back to Skylanders Superchargers with their, I think it was like 19 different starter packs that they had last year, each with a different figure.
Yeah, if you want Donkey Kong, you have to get this starter pack. If you want Dark Donkey Kong, you want this starter pack. But this one's got Bowser. This one's got the regular guys.
And then they even put Chase variants in with some of the original ones. It was a crazy look. So yeah, it was a lot simpler. I think they learned from the fact of the year before of not having the multiple SKUs. I'm still not too sure if having. I still feel they would have been better having one starter pack with a Disney character and a Star Wars character. I still feel, and not have gone down the. It still was a little bit too Star Wars focused, but you could always, here in the UK, you could buy the digital, you could just buy the disc if you'd already, so that was always a good option. No, that never happened out there for you guys.
Well, we did eventually get the digital version, but yeah, we couldn't just buy only the disc. You had to buy the starter pack. So.
No, so in general, it was good. There was a lot of fun doing it. We had the Toy Box Speedway. I think the Toy Box Speedway came out in October. We had Toy Box Takeover, which it never really kind of got a lot of attention beforehand. I think there was too much going on. In some ways, I wish they'd held that one there till November. That's the one little issue I think I had with that one.
Well, I think the big issue with Takeover wasn't necessarily when it came out. It was, it was a launch thing, and a lot of places had it as a free pre-order bonus.
Yeah.
But when it actually came time to pick it up, there were problems all over the place getting companies to recognize that. I had to. I went to my local Best Buy and I picked up all my pre-orders there, and I was like, "Where's Takeover?" Like, what is Takeover? Like, it's that thing over there. Oh, that'll be $20. No, it's supposed to be with the pre-order, and I had to show them. I had to go up to not just the manager on duty, but the actual assistant store manager.
Yeah.
To get it, be like, you need to honor what's written here.
So. Yeah, I always felt like I said there before, it would have been cool, I think, to have had the playset, to have that as the playset instead, have the Disney and the Marvel one, and then done Twilight separate, and kind of had that one cross brand, everything goes into it. But obviously, that's in hindsight. But they did seem to be, in general, seem to be understanding this like Disney to Marvel kind of, or Disney and Star Wars ratio. They wanted to be a little bit more better in terms of getting that crossbow. I loved all the fact that all the crossover characters could jump from one to the other. That was kind of pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that they were upfront and they said every Star Wars character you get will work in every Star Wars playset that comes out for 3.0. Be like, all right, so I can have Boba Fett fighting alongside, well, we didn't know the characters at that point, but like Kylo Ren or something, and be like, this is awesome.
It definitely, that was the kind of the cool thing that they did. Again, they learned how popular that was from from 2.0, and also it was how it offered extra value. I think it really helped push the Rebels characters a little bit, because they weren't then just toy box only sort of messes.
Yeah, and there was kind of this sense that every character, other than the non-Inside Out Disney characters, that every character you bought was going to be useful, whether you wanted to play just toy sets or toy boxes, or if you wanted to kind of mess around in the toy box. I mean,
they had that whole kind of US, like, they had that timed retailer exclusive for all the Rebels, which was a little bit of a messy kind of launch, but it wasn't too much of an issue, I think, in the long run, because it was only timed.
Well, it wasn't an issue in the States, but it was an issue in Canada, because Target had one of the exclusive characters. I don't remember which one, but Target no longer existed in Canada. They had closed up their shops a couple months ago before that. And so that timed exclusive was not available in Canada at all until the exclusive contract was done.
Yeah, I mean, for us here in Europe, we didn't even have it. They just came out, so they didn't have that issue. So that was like, I would say that was like one of the little. I know there's a lot of people were annoyed because placing online orders for like shipping and stuff and going around. It's always a little bit of a like a lot of people are like, no, I don't want to have to pay for all this shipping. I'll buy it from one place. So that was a bit annoying. We had all of that, and then you had all of that with the we're doing the light effects stuff now. Well, I remember it. That was a kind of similar thing. That was kind of officially announced at D23, but it was a bit of a mess of when they were coming out. Different dates for different ones, different retailers. They were just exclusive to one store. They never came out anywhere else. That was another kind of mess. And I think a lot of people were a little bit annoyed that they had, if they'd known a little bit more about, I mean, people have been holding off on them. I still feel like that was a bit of a weird thing that they did.
It definitely was one of those miscommunication things where we weren't sure what the deal was. You're right. It was at D23 we learned about them, and they're like, that's pretty cool. But they also specified at D23 there'd be no in-game difference between the characters. Yeah. But they never announced the price, so we're kind of sitting there like, all right, if this character's $14, is the light version going to be $20 or $25? As it turned out, it was only $1 more, but still. Yeah. And the other thing was Skylanders already had done this trick with their light cores, and those did have a very small in-game impact. So,
yeah,
there was a certain expectation, but at some point you got to kind of question, all right, what's the market for these?
Yeah, it felt like a double dip. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I think I only picked up 2. Had they all been like that originally and just been I think that would have been an amazing selling point. But I did actually just sit there and go, you know what? I don't need these. I barely play with Kanan anyway. I don't need 2 of them. I've got all these I just didn't do it. The only reason I picked up Yoda was because I was in store and saw it.
and for me at the time, I was playing almost exclusively on PC. Once they released the PC version, that was the version I started using because it was easier to record on. And there was literally no difference between the light effects and the regular version and PC. There was no reason for me to get them. No. I did in the end when they went on sale because it's like, we might as well just have them. But
yeah, it was. I think that was one of those little things. So we're going to go a little bit back again. So we had like about a month, 5 weeks where we just had the Twilight and the Inside Out characters. Again, Inside Out I thought was a great playset. It was growing up in the 80s. A side-scrolling game was perfect for me. I loved it. So I can't really kind of, the only thing bad to say about Inside Out was the characters were useless in the toy box. But generally, I love the playset. I like that. I like the fact they did that with Finding Dory. So for me, it was actually a good playset. I never really had too many issues with it.
I enjoyed the playset. I liked the characters. They did a good job with the playset, finding Dory as well. Like you, I grew up in the '80s, but unlike you, I was like, all right, we're past the '80s. I don't need side scrollers anymore. I grew up with Super Mario and Metroid and all those guys. Good. I played through that. I'll play some other games now.
Yeah.
So.
And I think also Twilight and Rise were very, very good playsets. The battle, the fighting techniques have been massively improved. So that was that. And then we had Speedway. And I still feel Speedway was a great toy. It was a great. I love that thing. I just thought it was such a cool thing.
I thought it was a great concept. The execution was a little bit off, especially in terms of the AI difficulty levels. But yeah, no, the tracks were great. The racing was fun. The special abilities of the weapons you picked up were a lot of fun. There were multiple ways to get through the tracks. I thought it was great. My problem was with the AI.
Yeah, but I must admit, I've got a little note for next week on one thing. I am really hoping that Sumo Digital are actually doing something for a Disney kart game, because I'd love to see that.
I would love a Disney kart game. I don't care if we're using the Pixar characters, the Disney characters, Marvel, Star Wars, all of them. I'd love it.
Yeah, so that was cool. I think I'm just thinking one of the only other really big issues really from the launch was the arcade fins mode was diabolical. It caused Abe's PlayStation to basically it reset the whole data for his, and we never went anywhere near it. That was the end of it.
Yeah, I was fortunate to hear about that in advance. I think it might have actually been Abe I heard it from.
Yeah.
And I have never been in the arcade, not once. I was just like, nope, not touching this. I'm not screwing around with this.
Yeah, I think that was one of those kind of really things, because it didn't work. I mean, I tried it when it was launched, and I think once Abe said that, I was like, right, I'm not going anywhere near it. I don't know if there's a lot of us that kind of did that. Whoa, we're not doing it. And then it was just this weird thing of it. It was being sold better than that idea than it ever really was. The online side of things never really worked. It took so long to get it fixed.
Yeah, I remember them hyping it up, and you can just jump into these toy boxes, and the toy boxes would randomly change, and they'd pick new ones that the community created. But then, either because of this problem, or they didn't have the staffing for it, it never really evolved into what they promised it would be.
Yeah, I do remember with the launch, farming was the unsurprising highlight for a lot of people. I couldn't stand it. I didn't see the point of it. I still haven't done those achievements for any farming. Yeah, that was a massive weird thing that came out.
I don't know. It was one of those weird things. It was kind of like Pokemon Go, actually, in that regard, is that it was massive for the first 2 weeks. There were people shooting videos of this is my farm. These are all my crops. I've got pumpkin crops. I've got candy corn crops. I've got, ooh, look at this. I found a gold crop. And then nothing after a week or two. Just, oh yeah, that's right. I can farm. I have sidekicks. Oh right. No one ever used the sidekicks.
Yeah, it was one of those kind of cool little things. I think, like you said, it was just a fun time to be in the game. I think at that point, I still feel like from launch till November was just. I still think of it as the golden time for Disney Infinity fans at that point.
There was still so much optimism. We didn't have Force Awakens yet. We didn't have, the leaks and the lack of news.
We still have the leaks.
Oh, we got the leak. But there wasn't anything to leak just yet.
No.
But there was so much optimism and joy that the game was good.
Yeah, I think the toy box was, the new options, like the camera will be really well received, and I do feel, and it's like we've been saying about being negative, so it felt at the time that there really was the kind of thing of, this is good. They're doing really well. They've delivered. It's fun. There's been a few teething problems and a few little issues, but generally the good outweighed. I think and I don't know if that was why the sort of the drop from there down was quite bad, because I think that was what I think was one of the big issues. I think everyone had such a great experience for a few months.
Oh yeah, the two Star Wars playsets that we got right out of the gate were fantastic. Twilight of the Republic is still one of my favorite playsets that from any of the three Disney Infinity games. So
yeah, so then it shifted gears. So November hit. We had a couple of Marvel characters. We had Ultron and Hulkbuster. I remember being slightly disappointed with how Hulkbuster played in game. He was a great figure, but I liked Iron Man, and he just didn't seem to be as good as him.
He was an awesome figure. Like the detail on him's great. Ultron's detail was great, but the playstyle for Hulkbuster was weird, and Ultron was seriously overpowered.
So I think there was a couple extra characters and stuff here and there thrown in, but generally, like, November was kind of like the down period. I think it was like, right, we've got the Christmas period, we need to get all this stuff that we've got out, everything has to be sold. So we got our first like taste of Marvel. We'd kind of heard about Battlegrounds, and I mean, I'd still been using the Marvel characters because they still were good in 3.0, whereas the 1. You didn't, other than Lightning McQueen, I never touched any of them, because I loved using Lightning McQueen in Speedway. That was it. So then we hit then it was like the build up to Star Wars: The Force Awakens, and the hype for the movie was fever pitch. There was so much demand for Star Wars: The Force Awakens. It was a huge highlight, and there was this playset coming. There was some figures. We knew Kylo Ren was coming. We knew we had Poe. We didn't know these characters, but we were excited about them. The movie hit. Everyone was on a Star Wars high. They had day release for that playset, which everyone was really excited about. And then everyone played it.
It had its moments. But yeah, that boss fight was terrible.
And of course, the biggest problem with it was the fact that you kind of got halfway through the movie, and then suddenly there was like, we didn't get told what the ending, we didn't get told what the rest of the script was, so we've just made it up as we go along. We've now created me and Abe have been having a stand-in joke about there just being a water park in the middle of it. We just didn't know what to do.
All right, well, you're gonna crawl through this Star Killer base, and then you're gonna throw grenades at stuff, and no mention of Han at all.
It was, and of course, in hindsight, the reason is was they were working on this on super fast. They were doing it super quickly. They also didn't have full access to the scripts. I don't think they knew what basic thing up till the point of where Han went into the building, and Han then was never mentioned again. I don't know if they necessarily knew what happened. He just suddenly disappeared from this, and it showed. It showed because it was Blackster. I think everyone was a bit like, this isn't what happened in the movie. This wasn't, they'd always done other places where it was never following the movie story. So they kind of got away with it. Because this was like, we're following the story and now we're no longer doing it.
Yeah, and then what's weird is we also know that some of the bits that they included, like on Takodana, where they're at Maz Kanata's cantina or whatever, some of the stuff that happened in that was originally going to happen in the movie and then got cut out.
Yeah.
So you could definitely tell they were working on an older version of the script, what parts of it they had. And then I think we talked about it when it was revealed not too long ago, that whole thing where like they could go into the room where the concept art was, but they couldn't take notes. And it's like, well, what did you expect was going to happen?
Yeah. I think that was like one of the big disappointments. People have been expecting something a lot better. It was a bit like, this is what happens when licensed games go out without proper planning and not having the right information. And especially then, in hindsight, when you look at Lego Force Awakens, which came out 6 months after the movie, the difference between the two was quite so different.
Oh, absolutely. The Lego Force Awakens, they had the advantage of knowing what the story was. They had additional story bits that are still getting doled out to us. It's a superior game than the playset ever was going to be, given the conditions it was produced under.
But it was sold at the idea that this was the tie-in. This is the only place you're going to play the Force Awakens, and it didn't match up to. No. But also one of the big issues, and I think this came back after post death of the game, was that Star Wars Battlefront severely took the knees out of Disney Infinity, because while Disney Infinity had all the Star Wars stuff, Battlefront was such a success, it floored Disney Infinity. I think that was one of the big issues that they had.
Yeah, I think that was Disney or Lucasfilms or whoever kind of going, oh, this Disney Infinity platform is good for what it does, but we do need other things as well.
And I think, and obviously this leads on to next week's show where we're talking about the future of it. Star Wars is set. Star Wars is set for the next 5 years of video games. They are well and truly sorted, and they've taken they aren't just relying on, they weren't relying on Disney Infinity. That was just an add-on. So there's definitely that thing of I think that was the first big major wobble of the game. And, this whole thing of no one really knew what it was. It was locked away. No one could get access to it until the day it came out, which is usually a bad sign for video game reviews and all the rest of it when things are locked away. But I think it was locked away because they were trying to be so secretive of The Force Awakens. We'd never seen anything like it.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't specific to Disney Infinity. No. That was it getting caught up in the tidal wave of Disney being like, no, nobody will know anything about this movie.
Yeah. And like you say, it doesn't necessarily fall on what that was a major, Disney Infinity, the team did what the best they could with the best of situation that the upper Disney or upper Star Wars had put on them. But it was kind of, I still feel like, you look back on it now as the first, it was the dip, wasn't it? That was the first kind of big dip.
Yeah, it definitely was the first warning sign. And I think in retrospect, they probably would have been a lot better off rather than trying to make a movie or a game out of the movie. They should have done it as like a side adventure or, some other story that they'd made up and just starred the same characters.
But I don't think they had access to the characters or any kind of, they didn't know who they were. I mean, they literally, by the sounds of it, like watched the movie when the game had come out and gone, whoa, we did all right. It was nearly the same.
I kind of feel bad for him on that one. That was a lose-lose.
Yeah, but unfortunately, they sold us a product, and they made us pay money for it, and therefore, by the time you brought them and the figures and all the rest of it, there is that kind of underlining thing of it didn't deliver what it promised and what people paid money for, and that's always the difference. It's like one thing, it's not good for them. It's like you paid for it. You paid good money for this playset, therefore that should have matched it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's very hard to say, all right, you're going to drop $35 or whatever you end up paying for it, plus 2 additional figures, plus maybe the power discs as well.
Yeah.
And it's a 2.5-hour adventure that matches the movie in only the most basic ways.
Yeah. You just mentioned power discs there, so I'd forgotten about this. There was this whole thing, obviously, with the launch of Disney Infinity 3.0, the removal of the blind bags, which I still feel like it was listening to the audience, it was listening to what families had been saying and had responded to it correctly. I still feel they did that right. We saw a lot less. And now I don't think really up until, we'd had the Tomorrowland Power Disc, which I still view as might be one of the worst sets they've ever done, but I love the fact that it unlocked stuff, and I was always like, this is what they're going to do. This is what they're going to do. And no, they didn't.
No. I think without the blind bags, they didn't really ever develop a good way of getting power discs to us. No. These 4 disc packs that were locked into a single theme, it wasn't the right way of doing it. And the problem is I couldn't tell you what the right way to do it would be. No.
I never had a major problem with the way they did it. Like when they did Good Dinosaur and they brought out the Power Disc pack, I thought that was good. I was always surprised at how little they'd done. Like they didn't do the Inside Out one. They didn't do, maybe a Moana set. They didn't do an Olaf set when they came out to kind of tie them all in. And in hindsight, it was this kind of thing of going that they were abandoning Power Discs. You could see it coming in, especially by the time we get into this year. They had abandoned Power Discs. And I can't help but feel like, in hindsight, would they have actually just dropped them altogether and maybe they weren't the money spinner that they thought they were going to be?
I think that, the Power Disc probably did really well in 1.0, but then they broke them up into the series. There was series 1 and 2 and 3 and up through 5 or something like that. Plus there
was 1, 2, and 3 from 1, and then there was 2 for
4 and
series
5.
2. And
then there were the gold packs as well on top of that. And I think once we got past that initial like Series 1 and Series 2, we're kind of like, okay, I'm kind of done with the power discs, except from like a collecting standpoint. The one major advantage, though, that the Series 1 through 3 and then the 2 for 2.0 was that because it wasn't set, they could stick in all sorts of themes and stuff that you wouldn't normally expect to see. They could throw Darkwing Duck in there. There were bed knobs and broomsticks was in there and stuff like that. Whereas if you're going to put it into a non-blind bag thing like they did with 3.0, you got to be like, all right, well, this is Tomorrowland. This is Force Awakens. You can't just be like, well, these ones are from the animated Robin Hood. Be like, well, cool, but why?
Yeah. And I just can't help but feel like all those options should have just been toys in the game anyway. It was always a bit of a money spinner. I feel like they got the gist of it. That they pushed it out there, but they knew that it wasn't working the way it was because I got stacks of them. I was literally just shoving the albums behind the wardrobe last night with them in. I never used them, and I think once people start going, I've spent a lot of money on these power discs, and I never use them, or I spent a lot of money on these power discs, and they're just a lot of money. That had fizzled out. You could tell that if Disney would have kept going with them if they had not have been working.
The real annoying part too was that some of them went for a lot of money on the secondary market too. Yeah. So it wasn't just like, oh, I only want the Aladdin power discs. I only want their Terrain and Skydome, and be like, oh, wait, those are going for $30.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. I don't need them.
And I think like Tomorrowland was obviously a massive misstep for the wrong one. That they should have done an Inside Out one. But then I think the Force Awakens. Did we have a we didn't even have Marvel Power Discs.
We did have a Marvel Power Disc. We had had the Ghost Rider Whip and
that was but that didn't come out till Battlegrounds.
Oh right, yeah, that came.
Yeah, for the November one we didn't have any, so it was kind of like this weird thing. And then we had Marvel Battlegrounds set, and then we never got them with Alice in Wonderland. We never got them with Finding Dory because I feel at that point they had already been canned. That I think the Marvel Battlegrounds Power Disc pack was the last power. Even if the game was carrying on this year, I can't help but feel that Power Disc was done at that point.
I got to agree. I don't think there was much future for the Power Disc at that point. I don't know what the sales figures look like, obviously, but I can't imagine that the current way they're being sold was really all that effective to people who weren't toy box artists. So.
Yeah, I definitely that was like an issue, which I'm going to be honest, and I still said this right from them. I did always prefer the way they were doing it with 3.0. Like the fact that here's a new figure, and here's some power discs. Sometimes you kind of felt like the power disc should have been just unlockable toys, but in general, I was never opposed to the way they were doing it. It felt better for me because it's it was easy to buy the power discs and trade them and all the rest of it. Because I got fed up of buying multiple packets, sending them off, posting them in jiffy bags. It was just it's just a pain.
I think one of the interesting things in the end was, when they released the Finding Dory figures, they released Nemo, a version of Nemo with 2 power discs. Now, they weren't new power discs, but they were, old ones. Honestly, I think if they had done that earlier, packaged in some power discs with characters, I think they would have done fine.
Yeah, it still feels like it was one of those situations. I think they were trying stuff, and it was just seeing what was working. I think the power disc bags probably worked better, but once it was cheap, I just got to a point. I remember with 2.0, I bought a load of bags, was trading them, going, sod this. Literally, it was cheaper just to buy the ones I wanted off of eBay, because I figured by the time I paid for the shipping and for the bags and trading them no, this is it. I'll just buy the ones I need. And I think that was what a lot of people started to do. And when they were selling off the packets for 25 cents, that was the end of the power disc.
And I don't think power discs are going to be the only place we're going to see this. Blind bags are very popular right now with things like Tsum Tsums and whatnot. And I don't think most people have the patience for it.
Yeah, I mean, you go in the supermarket, kids will buy that, but I don't know if it's like the Vinomation. I mean, that whole thing about blind bags. That's a whole other story. So we're going to jump into. So we got through to Star Wars. We then went into January. Now this is where the kind of what I would maybe call like the barren wasteland for probably about 6-8 weeks, where we got into January. Boba Fett was supposed to be coming out, but they never really kind of confirmed when he was supposed to be coming out in January, and he didn't. He didn't come out really till March. We were supposed to be having a Marvel play set. Everyone was like, it was just a down low from Christmas. It was like, okay, we've had the big stuff. Now it's time for everyone to settle down. The 4.0 discussion was starting to kick in a little bit because it's the start of the new year, but we knew we had Battlegrounds, and so therefore, it was building up. But I think one of the biggest disappointments was they were never hyping. There was all these links with the Marvel characters, and there was never any. There was never any like official announcement. There was all this mess with the Vita version of the Spider-Man. When's he coming out? When's he coming out? When's he coming out? When's he coming out? You knew he was coming. And we knew. We started seeing Vision and Black Panther, but it was just a really odd couple of months.
Yeah, and with all the leaks, we were constantly also being told you need to take those down. That you need to. You can't have that up. This is not official stuff, and we're trying to save it for official announcements and stuff like that. And we were desperate for news. I'm sure that the guys at Avalanche were desperate to tell us stuff, but they were getting embargoed. But it really felt like, well, we know stuff is coming. We don't know when stuff is coming. Just give us something to work with here.
Yeah, I mean, it was a massive kind of thing of just like they weren't telling us anything, but everyone knew it. It was all out there. There was so many images coming from different retailers and different places, and they never officially announced it. Those two characters until like the last week before it came out, and you can't help but feel like, and it. You look back on this as the hindsight things, and we were having these discussions about things don't feel right. The team went quiet. There was stuff going on. There was. You started realizing, I think then the sales numbers for the last quarters had been coming in, and they were starting to reposition themselves and trying to sort stuff out. Marvel Battlegrounds was the first downloadable play set. There was the first downloadable characters. We had the Blue Leak. That was the coming in March as well, which was like a left field character from nowhere, which proved that the DLC thing would allow us to have it. But once again, JV had been tweeting about teasing us something, and then it got leaked by a retailer, which then got community upset because we all ruined the surprise. It was a really weird thing.
Yeah, and it felt at that point like the community was also kind of starting to like fracture. Not just along the lines of do we post leaks, do we not post leaks, which is something we talked about previously, but also like how much confidence are we willing to have when we're not getting information?
Yeah. And also, I mean, we'd got to that point at that point of the year where we're going, there's doing too many leaks. There was just, it was got to the thing of the information's out there. Everyone's got it. And it was like, hold on, we're into year 4 of this and the same mistakes are still happening. Now it's not us anymore. And that was the way I looked at it. And our team had discussions earlier in 3.0. And it was just like, said, these leaks kept happening. The Alice, they updated the whole patch for Alice in Wonderland and revealed all their own characters. They were leaking it themselves.
Yeah, and I think in hindsight, though, also we probably should have looked at that as like, they're dumping everything on us just as a last-ditch effort here, even if they can't officially say so.
Yeah. I mean, and this was kind of a weird, quiet bit. And then, of course, they did that March next. They started hyping up next. They started getting people behind, we're going to be making next. And everyone's going, well, is it Disney Infinity Next rather than Disney Infinity 4.0? What are they announcing? Excitement was really stemming up for sort of, we're getting an early announcement. Next is coming. What is this? What is all, we didn't know what it was when they told us.
Yeah, and it turned out it was just a video format. It was what Toy Box TV morphed into, and honestly, in hindsight, that's another one of those things where you're kind of looking at it going, yeah, this was probably them cutting costs in an effort to make themselves look more valuable to Disney.
Yeah, it was. You look back on that there, and you think, because I still feel like had they done that next in January, it would have made more sense, because it would be like, this is coming up next. This is the next thing that's coming. These are the next characters coming. But they literally held off all their information until now, which was literally a few days before the release of the characters. Everyone had seen it. It was people were buying the figures, I think, if I remember rightly. There was that much. The next was so late, and of course they like teased Alice in Wonderland and Finding Dory at the end, but there was just this massive anticlimax. I remember sitting here and I was pissed off because they blocked Europe and the rest of the world from this massive, great big, we got emails about, make sure you're doing this, all press emails and all this. We're sitting there blocked. And it was, I think I turned a shade of green at that point.
I had forgotten about that. I had forgotten that they had basically locked it to North America. I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. There's nothing in here that should be restricted to American-only audiences. Why can't anyone else view this?
Yeah, of course. At this point, obviously, my sort of anger at the fact that I'm trying to report this and tweet and live blog and do all this stuff, and we were literally about to, I remember me and Abe were having a live podcast literally the minute it ended, and we went on. So they were like, "What's happened?" I'm just like, they locked us out. They said to watch it, and they told us all to do it, and it was just like. It was like it's such a silly mistake that they did because they ticked a box or something about it not being worldwide, and of course it threw it all off. But I mean that you could look at that and go, well, okay, that was just that was just a mistake, okay. But that whole next thing just went down like a lead balloon. It really didn't do what everyone. I mean, they said like we're going to get those play sets, which excited people, and there was going to be this new online content. But a lot of us, I think, saw between the lines of that very quickly.
Yeah, it was definitely, we want to draw hype. We want to make things exciting, and everyone's just sitting here going like, but you didn't tell us anything.
Yeah.
At all. There's nothing here.
I mean, the only thing that came really out next was the fact that there was no 4.0 that year. There was going to be a Rogue One, or there was a Marvel playset, a Star Wars playset, a Disney playset, and a Pixar playset. And everyone's going, oh, there's a Marvel playset coming. No, and they go, no, Battlegrounds is that place. No, you told us this a year ago. This is not next.
Yeah, and I think, people were like, oh, it's a Doctor Strange set. No, it's Battlegrounds.
No, but I've got that. It was one of those weird things of like, I just feel like Next was one of those really weird things. I've just remembered we forgot to talk about the Captain America First Avenger reaction to that in terms of the one figure. But there was this whole thing with Next and it all tied into that because they kind of revealed that it was just a load of miscommunication for those few months, basically January to March. We had that whole thing with Captain America coming out and saying there's one character in a playset and we're offering you better value.
No, you're not.
No, you're not. And then they did here's a free character from 2.0 if you're only in North America. The rest of Europe and the rest of the world are going to have to pay more and not get it at all.
Yeah, I just remember reading that and being like, okay, you want better value. I don't think your math is very good here because I don't know what the UK prices were, but it was originally $35 for a play set with 2 figures. And then Marvel Battlegrounds was $30 for 1 figure. And you're like, wait, but figures are normally about $14, $15. If you're going to reduce the cost, it should be like $20. Your math is terrible.
Yeah. Well, I always had said about how good value the playsets always had been with the 2 figures. If you deducted the price of the 2 figures, the playset was like $5, which was never really the true price. The playset was really the thing you were paying for, and the figures were $5 each. But that whole thing of dropping down, people were like, no, I don't like this. I want 2 figures. I don't want I'm being forced now to buy a variant figure they didn't want. And so that was and I can't remember. I think Disney went dark again on that when that broke as well.
Oh yeah. As soon as that information came out, Disney, they issued a response like, oh, well, it's a smaller box, so it'll be better on the shelf. Because shelf space was definitely in competition with Lego Dimensions Out and Amiibos and all that stuff. But we're like, no, that's not what we're talking about. You're telling us one thing. Our math is adding up something completely different. You're giving us a figure we don't necessarily want. Oh yeah, and where's Scarlet Witch and stuff like that.
It still felt like that. Like I said, it leaked via Amazon, as most things do, and it came out, and the reaction was there. So Disney then put out that blog post, And then I still feel like that whole 2.0, right, we've got to get these Marvel characters out, where I don't even know if that decision to give us a free character or give you Americans free character was a last ditch attempt to try and clear out the figures, or literally like, oh my word, the community has gone nuts over this and we need to settle them down.
That's probably a little A and a little B as well. So
yeah,
I think it was them throwing us a bone, trying to be like, here, we are actually being nice to you, but it's like, well, most of the people who care already have the figures.
Yeah. I mean, going to be honest, having one figure in a playset really doesn't bother me in terms of I thought it was a better idea, like the way they did Finding Dory. I don't have a problem with it. It was the way they tried to sell it to you, like a sales pitch, like we're doing you a favor. I'm like, no. Had they done this from the whole of 3.0 when they launched Twilight the Republic and Inside Out, you would have just been like, yeah, but they did it mid-season. I mean, I think they still viewed like this year was 3.5, so they were starting afresh. But I never had a problem with the one figure. It was the pricing was bad, and the way they tried to sell it, and the way they tried to sugarcoat it, didn't go. Again, people started. I think there was this kind of the community of like, the diehard ones of going, you can't say anything negative, and then there was a lot of people going, whoa, I don't like this. This is not what this is. It was a really bad reaction to it.
No, I agree completely. I have no problem with a single figure playset. None at all. But don't tell me, like you said, that you're doing us a favor by taking $5 off the price and taking a full figure out. And, that's not how this works.
No.
So.
And I feel like that was the whole thing with that year, that whole period was, we had the reaction to the single character for the playset. We then had Next, which was a massive disappointment. Yeah, everyone was excited about the future for the game because now we were being told, they finally cracked the one platform. We were going to get more Disney content, but at the same time, everyone was looking and going, you are cutting back. You said you're not going to E3. You're not, all the lines were already starting to line up before that all that information started crawling in, and I remember, it's like those teasers for Finding Dory and Alice were just like, you should have showed us stuff. It was not, this is what's out next week. This is supposed to tell us the next 3 months, and they never did. Because I don't think, in hindsight, it was like I don't think they were really too sure what was going on.
No, I suspect. I don't know for sure, but that Avalanche was almost as much in the dark as we were about these things.
Yeah,
and I remember when they made the Battlegrounds announcement that there would only be one figures, there was part of my thinking going, oh, this is cost cutting. Someone somewhere said we need to cut costs drastically, and this is very much if they're cutting costs like this, there might be problems. So
I think that, but I mean, me and Abe, we were talking about this because it was going dark. We were getting no information. Toybox. I think remember Toybox TV had stopped just around the time the Force Awakens had come around. The team had gone quiet. There wasn't a lot of information coming on. And a lot of people were going, well, maybe they're just working on 4 or whatever they're doing next. It was uncharacteristically quiet. The battle playset was coming, and we weren't hearing any information. We then obviously had. And there seems to be that thing from between Next and Alice in Wonderland. We had the leaks about thing, and people are starting to go, well, this is a thin year. This is a light year. There's no E3. There's no San Diego Comic-Con. They're not doing any of the events. The Next was viewed as a cheap way of kind of, and I'm going to be honest. The whole thing about Cotton Cuss was like, they were spending a fortune promoting it for the last 3 years. Maybe, I know as a business owner, sometimes you do have to go, right, we're having a lean year. We're not spending as much. We need to cut back. We've built this new piece of equipment. Now we need to just make some money off of it because we can't keep investing in it. That's normal.
Yeah. And I think they were starting to look at that and go, we can't really afford Toy Box TV. We can't do Twitch streams every week. We need to focus on actually making money right now. And the funny thing was they were making money. They just weren't making the money that Disney wanted them to make.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing. So, we kind of had been running up to this point of, the warning signs were all starting to flare. You look back on it in hindsight, and you literally can see the red flags everywhere. But me and Abe were talking week on week. I remember like a few people sort of saying to us, like, especially Domingo, you're getting quite sort of, you're being quite negative about it. It's like, well, I was like looking at it and going, well, I'm not seeing it. I was, it was the frustration, but also that kind of thing around, things aren't right, people. And Abe's there going, I think, even Abe joked about the fact that the game was being cancelled. There was this kind of, we were feeling this, the sense that there was something wasn't quite right about things weren't sounding right. We were being treated, the community was being treated differently. This thing, there's going to be a toy box summit. I'm like, okay. But like when they said about these next things, people are going, well, are they going to do a toy box summit? Are they really going to cut costs back that much?
Yeah, and you know what? There was always the question: are they going to attach Toy Box Summit to something else as well, or is it going to be just kind of its own thing? Is it only going to be Toy Box Master Artists? Is the general community going to be involved? Obviously, now we're never going to know. But the fact that there was no information coming out about it either, was problematic, and we didn't know what kind of cutoff there would be, because originally I think it was you needed to be selected 7 times to go to the one at D23, but
I mean
that didn't seem feasible.
I mean, even me and Abe, I mean, we were saying like, when they're supposed to do all these cuts and stuff, we're going, well, maybe they're going to just literally like invite 10 people, and you have to be in the US within the LA area. We're not putting any transport in, and we're going to just do it in a basement. It was that kind of feeling that things weren't going right, and so I just remember when that press, that announcement came in, and Twitter and everything just went nuts. Where Disney just basically said we're pulling out of game development, and Disney Infinity is cancelled. And it was just kind of like, I remember everyone, it was just like shock, just pure shock. Sure, just like, but at the same time, my little brain just going, this is not a surprise. They've been saying they've been giving these warnings.
Yeah, it was one of those things where the announcement itself was a surprise, but at the same time, people are also kind of going, yeah, we should have seen this coming.
And I think, and obviously then having like the Alice in Wonderland and the Finding Dory play sets and stuff coming after the kind of the announcement of the end of it was always going to hit sales. And, it's quite sad. I mean, I was in the supermarket yesterday or the other day, and, the Infinity section, it's all reduced to clear, and it's just a bit raggled. All the Skylanders have already been cleared out. And you're looking at it going, I don't think there's going to be a lot here in a few months. This is going to be gone once Lego Dimensions U2 comes in. This is all going to be cleared out. And it just, I feel like the end of it, looking at it, this is like, the end of Disney Infinity was very, we've been talking about that for weeks, about how drawn out it was in terms of the announcements. But right up to that final release of Finding Dory, the idea of them going forward with single releases, doing less figures, being cheaper, I can't help but feel like I really wish they'd been given that chance to do that.
I think that, there are certainly ways that Disney could have done this, where they could have kept Infinity going at a much lower cost to themselves. And we could obviously brainstorm tons and tons of ideas of how to do it, cheaper figures, not doing these, 12-inch figures that they had planned and stuff like that. But ultimately, Disney decided it wasn't worth putting the money into it when they could be putting the money into something else. And I mean, that's their prerogative. So,
and I still feel like, in general, the major big chiefs look at the bottom line at the figures and the prices and go, this product is not delivering what it's supposed to. Battlefront completely just, I don't know if Battlefront is to blame for the fact of that it's so well that then they started looking at it going, but maybe Lego Marvel Avengers, maybe that one, maybe that game, all the data must have been coming out around the March time of that had been maybe how that had been selling. I'm trying to think of some other games like maybe even that dance game that came out on the Xbox One. Maybe they were just looking at some of these other games and some of the Nintendo stuff and going, well, this is not adding up. And Disney have had a very bad relationship with the video game section anyway over the years of jumping in and out of licensing and unlicensing. And I think the big chiefs, they were cutting costs everywhere. It wasn't just in games. And I think they just looked at the bottom line and going, we can make more money somewhere else. But in looking back at Disney, I still feel like they didn't feel like they were positioning to relaunch. You can see how they were moving Disney Infinity to be a more cheaper, cost-effective with the online content. The original 8 playsets that we got leaked on Best Buy 2 years ago was actually true, and it was just like, they would set the course, but they were never able to actually, they kind of ran aground before they even got there.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned this a bit too, is it looks like it's not just the video game sector. It looks like Disney is kind of going, all right, we're making money off this, but we can make more money if we do it this way. It seems like every week right now, as I'm watching your Twitter in particular, is like, we're closing down this part of Disney World, but don't worry, we're going to open it up as something else. We're stopping this nighttime show in favor of doing this nighttime show. Obviously, the thing we talked about a couple weeks ago, the Tower of Terror in Disneyland is turning into Guardians of the Galaxy. So it's not just video games. It's all across the board.
Yeah. I mean, TV shows are being cancelled. Movies are being changed. Budgets are going around. The thing is, you look back at Disney Infinity 3.0 and you can see that, it had an amazing 6 months. I still feel, well, not even maybe 6 months, I don't think it quite went as long as that, but right through to maybe until the Force Awakens release, the game was on a high and it was doing very, very well. But it's what we perceived to be doing well. We don't know what the numbers were doing, and I think it underperformed when it came to the numbers.
Yeah, and that's, you look at the earnings calls that they released, and almost all the notes say we're making money, but we didn't make the projections that we wanted to make, and they never specifically mentioned Infinity up until that last one.
I think even they had been even through 2.0 they had been saying about like Infinity not performing as well as they'd hoped. And the trouble is, Disney had been going through this stage of, in general, Frozen had exploded. And you read it and goes, well, Captain America's made $1 billion, but we're still down because Frozen's not making as much money. It's always because they did so well one year, it never matched up to it.
Yeah, I think maybe Disney needs to work on their expectations a little bit. And it's one of those themes we keep touching on where they're kind of like, yeah, we're releasing a bunch of movies, but we don't know how they're going to do.
No.
So.
No, and it's that kind of thing of like, I mean, I know a business as well. It's like sometimes if I go in there expecting the busiest day of the year, every single day of the year, I'm going to be disappointed, and that's and I don't know if that was what they were doing. But then this is where we're going to talk next week about like the future of Disney games, of how Disney put all their eggs into one basket and they dropped it.
And I think the question that's going to haunt all of us from the Disney Infinity is how much of it was Disney Infinity and Avalanche and Ninja Theory and these guys, and how much of it was Marvel and Lucasfilms and Disney not giving them the tools they needed to do their job properly. Yeah. And we'll never know for sure, but it's certainly in there.
It definitely feels like, in hindsight, you're looking at this game and you're thinking, all the signals were being shown off earlier on, and I think 2016 is always going to be a dark year for him, because 2015 for Disney Infinity was really, really popular. So 16 was just like this, and it died, and that's all it'll be known for. It will just be, well, they didn't tell us stuff, and then it died, and it is a shame. I still feel like I would have loved to have had them. Maybe I don't think the big chiefs really gave them like room to like. Okay, maybe they knew the quarter before. They go, right, you need to drop your costs by next quarter. At which point, by the time they got everything in, maybe they didn't realize. I don't know necessarily if these big chiefs know how long video games, what it takes to get the shit changed. It takes a long time.
I suspect they probably knew even longer than that. Actually, I'm betting that the Avalanche team probably knew in December, after the initial launch, when Disney's probably looking at it going, well, your launch numbers didn't make up for the costs that we put into it.
Yeah.
Get your stuff in line. And, they couldn't quite make it. And that, of course, is all a guess. Yeah. We're not going off insider information or anything, but that would be my theory.
Yeah. It definitely looks, like I said, if you look maybe like August, September, October, maybe even November sales, and then go, right, this, it did well. It was the #1 Toys to Life, but you keep reading about how the Toys to Life category is shrinking and it's not growing because families and kids are either growing out of it or becoming wise to the tricks. Parents, they don't take them long to, I still feel Skylanders are going to have a tough year ahead of them.
Well, what Skylanders made their own made their own basket and kind of screwed it with superchargers, and to a degree before that, where they're just going in and they're throwing in gimmick after gimmick, and people, like you say, are getting wise to it, and they're screwing around with Imaginators. There's this whole hubbub right now about like you can create your own Skylander, but one of the first choices you make is going to be locked into that crystal no matter what you do. And people are like, excuse me? I'm not spending $10 just because I accidentally picked a fighter class when I meant an archer class or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, I think, how they move forward. And I'm hoping LEGO Dimensions learns from some of the mistakes that Disney Infinity did, because ultimately there's going to have to be some learning. But also, I always feel like toys and video games are always going to be interconnected from now on, because kids are coming up where they are going to expect their action figure to do something somewhere else, be it an app or some kind of interactive kind of augmented reality or something like that. And Disney Infinity was maybe the first kind of big thing for Disney. But like I said, I can't see Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars games interconnecting properly for a long time yet, following what's happened to this game.
Or ever. Honestly, I don't think we'll ever see Lucasfilms playing nice with Marvel, playing nice with Disney ever again, really.
Well, Disney and Star Wars seem to be all right, because you look at like Crossy Roads, they're working together on that.
That's true.
Star Wars is in Zoom Zoom. Star Wars, I think, is because they've not quite got the same aspect. I think it's the Marvel, like Zoom Zoom. They aren't adding Marvel characters to Zoom Zoom. They added Star Wars, but no Marvel. We're going to do a separate app. Disney Crossy Roads, going to add Star Wars, but we're not adding Marvel. There's still that split, and I don't think they were ahead of their time.
Yeah, they were, and I actually didn't realize that Star Wars had been added to the Zoom Zoom game.
Yeah, it was quite a while ago. Yeah, it was quite a while they did that slowly. They did a Star Wars event recently and stuff like that. But they this is where you kind of look at them. They've been integrating with each other a little bit, and I think Star Wars is coming to Magic Kingdoms soon.
That would actually be kind of fun. I wouldn't mind having, like Han and Luke and Leia sitting around mingling with Cinderella. And
but Star Tours is in Disney, is in the Magic Kingdom, or not in the US, not in Florida, but in Paris and Disneyland. It is in the Magic Kingdom. So very chance of it. But I think, to be honest, have you got any final close? We'll do a closing thought really on sort of the whole of 3.0 really before we end this one.
I think that 3.0 got canceled before it actually really got started. We had that great launch. The launch was fantastic. Twilight of the Republic, Rise Against the Empire, etc. were great. They fumbled a bit with Force Awakens. But man, the stuff that was coming, the stuff that we heard about, at least in theory, oh man, there were some good things coming. And if we'd had a chance, I think... some of the things that they had planned could easily have turned the tide back in their favor. They could have had, this Christmas season could have been like Infinity 3.5, not officially, but, in practice. And, we'll never know.
No. No. But you can't help but feel like Disney Infinity's or the Disney consumer products money this Christmas is going to be a lot lighter than the last few years. They basically, I suspect they've just written off this whole season just because there isn't really a lot coming out. But in general, for me, Disney Infinity 3.0 was a great game. It still is a great game. There was a lot of great content in there. It is a lot of fun. There's a lot to be had. If you haven't jumped into the game, jump into it. If you have got the game, jump in and play it, especially before they shut everything down. But it was I feel like this year, 2016, was the year that finally all that money being spent had to, was not bringing in what they wanted. And the big chiefs had brought in the big slab and said, right, cut costs or you're gone. And I don't think they cut the costs quick enough or fast enough or heavy enough to make that save. But then the fact they just axed the whole division was basically down to but down to money. You can make more money on this, this, and this isn't bringing it in. And you know, we're going to talk about next week about the future of the games. Well, I can't help but feel like their idea of having one platform with every single license under the one thing, I think once it never worked once they did that, because they were never going to be able to sell enough content from everything that 3-4 separate games were going to sell into one game with all the figures. I don't think the idea was, in theory, I think it was great, but I don't know if in practice it was ever going to work. It's fine if you've got a Chicken Little game which underperforms, but then you have Star Wars Force Awakens or Lego or, you know, Star Wars Battlefront, which was always going to take more than a Finding Dory playset. Then I think that was always the issue.
Yeah, I mean, you can't judge every playset by every other playset, but that's how it works out, because that's how the system is designed. So
yeah, you know, you have people buying Finding Dory playset. Well, would they have gone out and bought that Finding Dory video game? You would have gotten more. I can't help but feel that Finding Dory game would have sold better than a playset, and a Force Awakens tie-in game would have sold better than the playset. You know, yeah. And that is how I start feeling like now of the licensing program was not great. It was not ideal. And, you know, that sometimes there were some humdingers of some really bad movie tie-ins, but they can make more money in the long run doing separate entity. Having, you know, if they came out with Disney Infinity Toy Box and it was just a toy box, it could have worked. I think they just tried to do too much. And while it was great for us involved in it from the outside looking in, it was it was too scary and too much of an expensive prospect to get into.
Oh, well, the expensive part was definitely a big one, especially when you're, you know, a mom or a dad just trying to figure out what to get little Timmy for Christmas and be like, wait, you want me to spend how much?
Yeah. And then, you know, like I said, you could go out right now, buy Lego Force Awakens and Disney Art Academy, and you've got two separate games. And, you know, I feel in the long run, Disney Infinity, they had a great idea, but I think getting the message out was always difficult. And I think year on year and year on out, it was difficult. It was getting harder and harder to sell, because then you had the parents on the first game going, whoa, I'm not buying you more. I've spent money on this. Whereas if Finding Dory game had come out last month, parents would have been like, oh yeah, Finding Dory game, I'll buy you that. And in the long run, I feel like the game was never going to, each year I feel like it was dropping, because they knew that they could make more money with someone else.
Yeah, and then also, you know, if you buy a Finding Dory game, or if you buy Lego Force Awakens, you have all the characters minus, you know, season pass characters, and you've got a fully functioning game. You've got every character, and you can do anything you want in it. You don't have to wait for Kylo Ren to come out 2 months later. I know he launched at the same time, but, you know.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like, you know, you look at it now and it's like, the trouble is, I think when they put all their eggs into the one basket because they wanted to not do those really bad movie tie-ins, they also alienated too many people, because then they didn't do enough content for everybody else outside of the Infinity platform, because they were pushing, and, you know, and then I still feel like, you know, looking back on it now, the way they pushed people aside for the Marvel, and then they kind of did the same for Star Wars. They lost a lot of their core audience and hurt them in the long run, and I don't think they recovered.
No, I mean, and also, you know, there wasn't just any one factor. There were lots of different things coming in there. There were a lot of different things from various angles that maybe individually wouldn't have mattered, but once you add them all up, it became problematic.
Death by 1,000 paper cuts kind of comes to mind, because, you know, the thing is I think for us, we enjoyed the game and we played it and we understood it. So therefore, you know, when you're in it, you can look at it and go, well, it's fine. It works great. Well, you guys, but when you're looking from the outside in, it doesn't make any sense. And it never made any sense. And, you know, when they did this, you know, they did that Star Wars license and stuff like that for those other games. When they put all their eggs into the one basket, it was too risky in the long run, and it was never going to bring in the money. I think they just thought it was just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and just keep taking more and more money. And yeah, I don't know if it was ever going to manage to do that.
No, but while we still had the dream, It
We
was
did, yeah.
it was very entertaining, and there were some very good times that came out of it. So
yes, I think that was a good thing. I think there was a lot of fun. I mean, obviously, as a podcast, we dissected everything a little bit more detailed than a normal person would have to. So it maybe makes you slightly more jaded because you have to remember and go through all the details. But that was the thing. It was a fun game. There was a lot of fun to be had. Go and enjoy it. I mean, I feel like now, it's there's I know a lot of people have they're either they're in two camps within the community. So either I cannot play this game anymore, or B, I want to cling on to every last drop of it before it goes, kind of thing.
Yeah, it definitely seems like there's not too many people just kind of being like, I've got the figures, I've got the play sets, I can enjoy it whenever I want to. And it's either, I need to sell all of this right now, or I've got so many dreams, I can't let it go. Can't let you go, Jack.
Yeah, it is just, it is, and I think fundamentally, and I'm the biggest thing I'm worried about, and I think, we'll talk about this again next week, is the long-term effect of now it feels like we're going to be entering the Warren Wasteland of Disney games for 18 months to 2 years of very, very little. And I got used to having content. I think that's the hardest thing. Is we've been eating, we've been having lots of food, and now suddenly now you can't have anything.
No. So you had your choices of whatever you wanted to eat, and now you're going to eat McDonald's every day for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Well done. Oh, God. Well, I think on that note there, we'd love to know your thoughts on what you guys thought of Disney Infinity 3.0 and the whole thing as a whole. This really has kind of been what I would call our final dissection of Disney Infinity before we kind of essentially put it to the history. From the podcast point of view, we've been making some changes over the last couple of months, and it almost does feel like this is kind of we really wanted to kind of jump into the history and what went wrong with it before really essentially now, the Infinity is over really for this point onwards. Really, there's not, bar doing our favorite bits, which we could do maybe as a celebration episode. I think that would be kind of quite nice to do maybe in the dark period coming up. But in general, we wanted to kind of get all the dirty, nasty stuff talked about, and essentially just a case of airing it and sort of moving on really. But I'd love to know all of your thoughts on this. Anything you want to add on that, James?
No, that's pretty much it. I think there were a lot of very good times, and obviously we didn't talk about those. So I do think revisiting that at some point and being these were our favorite moments.
Yeah.
But today is not that day. We'll definitely come back to that.
No. Yeah, that's the Christmas episode.
It's a white Christmas.
Yeah. So on that note there, I want to thank everyone that is a patron over at patreon.com/DisKingdom. Also, if you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, hit that subscribe button on all the other versions, and you can also check us out on all the different options. We are also doing a competition for the next couple of days over the website where I'm giving away a $25 gift certificate for DisneyStore.com. So if you haven't done that, do that on there. So James, where can they find you?
You can find me at IHI_James at Twitter, and also at vagabondpeak.com.
There we go. So on that note, guys, thank you very much for watching, and to infinity and beyond. Laters.